So that's a big pressure actually. People might not realize because we don't want to be saying wrong things.
So Professor Anand was like the forcing function.
He was like a catalyst.
Catalyst. Oh, I missed that. Yeah, the catalyst.
You're a mechanical engineer, right?
Yes, yeah. That.
Hi, my name is Amrit. We've heard that IIT Madras is the best place to build. So we've come down to the Sudhan Shankar Innovation Hub. We want to meet some people. These are builders. We want to talk to them about their work and also ask them what makes IIT Madras the best place to build.
Hello and welcome to the Best Place to Build podcast. Today we are sitting with Professor Raghu. He's a professor at IIT Madras in the Department of Chemical Engineering and the Department of Data Science and AI. So that's two departments. And he's also a well-published researcher. He's written 2 books. We'll explore that. He's also the Dean for Global Engagement, and we'll explore what that means. In addition, one final piece of introduction, he's also an alumnus of IIT Madras from, I think, the batch of 1990. Is that correct, Professor? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Amrut.
Professor, let's start with your student days. So you were a student here from 85 to 1990?
86 to 90.
Okay. Can you tell us about how your days were at IIT Madras? And also, since you're now a professor, how has times changed?
So I don't go to hostels much now, so I don't know what's the scene in the hostel. But our days, it was a lot of fun. I still remember my 4 years as the best times of my life here at IIT Madras. We used to study, we used to do well in academics, but at the same time, there was really not much pressure compared to now. I think that's something that has changed. We were very secure about what we will get after finishing. There were never any doubts about what life holds for us, the brash young IITM those days. We used to have fantastic times. We used to play TT till 2:33 in the night in the common room. We used to have these cricket competitions in the quadrangle and so on. I simply remember those days as about some of the best times of my life.
I have to ask you, which hostel were you in?
Narmada.
Narmada, okay.
The best hostel.
Oh, okay.
We had several six-a-side competitions that we won. I think 9 or something.
Was it called Schroeder back then?
Schroeder was the overall cup, but the competition that was very popular was six-a-side.
Okay.
It's not there anymore, I think. It used to be played opposite Quark, and Narmada was the best. In fact, we had such a strong set of players. We had Narmada A and B.
I don't know who's watching from Narmada, but I want to ask you, was Sarang a thing?
No, it was called Mardi Gras back in those days, and I've been involved with this peripherally. I was not very involved in the main organization of the event, but we did have someone who was very involved, and we used to help out. So I still remember. I used to have a two-wheeler, so I still remember going to Alsa Mall. I don't know whether it exists in Chennai.
Alsa Mall in Chepauk.
And sticking posters about Mardi Gras and so on. So those were really good times. And of course, these competitions and the mind benders and so on, right, were really fun. Was it called Just a Minute? That jam was really fun. And I used to really enjoy the music competitions, the Tamil songs and the Hindi songs and so on, the more popular music competition from college kids and so on. So it was really fun in those days.
Nice. So, Professor, you were a student of chemical engineering, and then I think the norm back then was that after you finish IIT, you typically go abroad to study further. So, as I understand, you went to Purdue. Could you tell us a little bit about your student life in US and how it was different?
So again, I think, so in our class, I think if I remember right, there were about 31 students. And again, if memory serves right, 26 to 28 of us went abroad, all of us to the US. And I think a large number of them finished PhD. So that used to be the kind of trend back then. And grad student life, was again a lot of fun because you get to explore the creative side of your technical skills. Purdue was a great place because there are lots of Indian students, and IIT Madras was very popular at Purdue. So
I've noticed a lot of IIT Madras, especially in chemical engineering students, would go to Purdue.
not only chemical engineering, yes, chemical engineering, but there are lots of IIT Madras seniors at Purdue. So the transition was unbelievable. So I don't remember doing much. A house was chosen for us. The first month rent was paid. We got picked up from Indianapolis and then got our first fantastic meal as a dinner. So it was such a smooth transition because of the strong connect IIT Madras had with Purdue. And at Purdue, life was really good. Again, I was very much into sports, so I used to play badminton a lot, 3-4 hours. And then once coursework was done, it was just great fun doing research, learning things, contributing, and so.
Nice. So I know that you told me that in with the time that you were a grad student, AI was a thing, and then although your field was chemical engineering, you were using AI in chemical engineering. But before we go there, can you tell me a little bit about, when we talk to outsiders, because I'm from mechanical engineering, so I understand this somewhat, but when we talk to outsiders, I'm not sure they understand that chemistry and chemical engineering are different. So what does chemical engineering mean to a general public?
Yeah, so there are lots of connections. I will also tell you why I worked on AI in chemical engineering at Purdue, how it came about. That itself is a very fascinating story. But to answer your other question about chemistry and chemical engineering, um, in a very simple term, chemical engineers make things in bulk. So if a chemist finds out a reaction and shows that something is produced in a lab, then to scale it up so that it's mass produced is a chemical engineer's job. So you can think of this as the engineering aspect of chemistry. And again, now things are getting very blurred, right? So, you know, both chemistry folks and chemical engineers work on catalysts, and chemistry folks work on data science. In fact, I teach a course called Chemistry for Data Scientists in IIT Madras, Zanzibar. And chemical engineering, of course, is in every field. And I'm sure every engineer will say the same thing about their engineering. They'll say mechanical is everywhere, aerospace is everywhere. Chemical engineering is truly everywhere, right? The shirt you wear, the slippers that we wear. Look at that advertisement sheet there. That is chemical engineering. Fuel cells, part of it is chemical engineering. And semiconductors, for example, when you make the semiconductors, they have to have very polished surface, something called chemical mechanical planarization, the CMP. A lot of chemical engineers work on that. So, much like many other fields, I think the chemical engineering is there in almost every engineering material that we use.
So if anything is being manufactured at a large scale, and it involves any kind of chemical, which is basically everything. So
that's broadly chemical engineering.
Yeah.
Of course, the technicalities are there. What do we study? We study how mass is conserved. We study how energy is conserved. We study how momentum is conserved, which mechanical engineers also do. But when chemical reactions are there in the systems, how do these affect these things and so on? So that's the way, that's a unique aspect of chemical engineering, that you have reactions that occur, and whatever mechanical engineers might study as energy balance, we chemical engineers also study as energy balance, but when chemical reactions are going on.
Right.
And as a very layman explanation.
100%. And the core idea here is that when you're doing it with test tubes, it behaves in a certain way. But when you're doing it in a large cauldron, there's a lot more that you need.
Yeah, just to take a very, very simple example, if I gave you a very little amount of this coffee and say mix it well, it's very simple. if you pour the same coffee in this cup, say mix it really well, harder. Think of a reactor this room in size and say mix it well, it's different, right? So that's called the effect of scaling things up, and we study how things behave in larger systems, so on. And of course, in a test tube, even though that is also dangerous, but if there is an explosion, the effect is minimal. But imagine safety considerations when you have larger systems. So those are.
In fact, as you're saying it, I have this image of idli batter, which we make at homes. But now we have these companies which are making them in tons and tons and then transporting it. And that's a fermentation process.
Absolutely.
And that expands and that spoils. So it's clearly a lot of engineering involved.
And the batter, when it comes to your dosa pan, whether you can take a dosa that comes out beautifully or not. Of course, now they have materials which are non-stick, so it's easier. But in olden days, when you didn't have non-stick and so on, it's actually a very interesting heat exchange problem. The correct heat you should have so that the dosa comes out without getting broken on the plate and so on. So, there are lots of interesting aspects of engineering in general, and of course chemical engineering in everything that we do.
In your PhD, you move from whatever we are talking about towards data science. So how was that journey like, and what does it mean?
So interestingly, I told you, so I was doing my last year of bachelor's here, and Professor Anand, who was my project guide, wanted some students to do a project where the project was actually building an expert system for identifying what vapor liquid equilibrium equation you should use for given a particular system. So he wanted the student to build a system where you go through a series of questions, and then there is a knowledge base, and based on the answers to the questions, the knowledge base will pick a particular equation that should be used. So this was maybe, if I remember,
decision making.
It's called knowledge-based systems or expert systems. Those were old AI terms. And if I remember right, maybe 150, 200 rules. And then, you answer questions, and then if there are conflicts with your answers, conflict resolution and so on. So interestingly, there was an expert system shell where you program these rules. There was a floppy disk of that.
Yeah.
And unlike these days, the floppy disk didn't come with any instructions, no user manual, nothing. So we, myself and another friend of mine did this project. We got this floppy disk, and here is a problem. Go and build this system. So anyway, long story short, we built this, but I got very fascinated by this expert system, AI and so on, at that time during my bachelor's project. So my bachelor's project title is an expert system for really selection. Then I looked at universities where people were doing AI in chemical engineering, and there are very few. And Purdue was one place that there were faculty doing this. And Professor Venkat, who was my PhD advisor, was at Purdue at that time. So that was one of the reasons that I was excited by Purdue. But more importantly, Purdue was also a really, really good school. And in fact, in the top of my list of schools that I wanted to go to. And Professor Anand had a wonderful connection with Purdue. So Anand recommended me strongly, and I got into Purdue. So that's how I got into this field of AI and chemical engineering. But a postscript for that is that floppy came from Professor Venkat.
Oh.
When the computer science department here had called him to come and give a talk on expert systems. He had come here, and then he had left that floppy, and that completes the circle.
Nice. I'm good. I want to say that when I was a student here, 2003 to 8, Professor Anand was a director. And he was, of course, a fabulous director. So good. But you knew him as a professor, and you maybe attended his class. How was he like in class?
He was inspirational, I should say, because we all looked up to him. There was one thing which was unbelievable about him was that he never carried notes, and he was teaching thermodynamics. And thermodynamics is both abstract and it's also quite mathematical with all of these PDEs and so on. So I still remember you come, the board will be empty, you'll start writing. At the end of the class, the board will be full of equations. And we all used to sit and say, wow, how can someone hold all this in their head and without any missteps go through this? So it was a very, it's a fantastic experience with Professor Anand. And he also had other very interesting things. He will mark only negative marks. Which is he'll only so let's say there's a question for 10 marks, he will say -3, and then he will sum up all the negative marks and then subtract it from the total, and that's your final mark. So that was something which I had never seen with anyone. Of course, BTechs being BTech, there are some students who tried to not answer questions thinking that he'll miss that question and negative mark. But of course, you're smarter than that, I'm sure.
That's pretty cool. Professor, in your career, you have taught, after your PhD, you taught at IIT Bombay, and then you taught at Purdue, and then in New York, and then again in the US, and then you came here. So you've taught at 4 universities. It'll be nice for us to understand how your journey through that has been, and what are the differences between these universities?
So maybe this is not what you want to hear, but I love to, because this is an IIT Madras podcast and I am representing IITM. But I have to say this, there is not much difference between IITs. Sure. So I had the loveliest time at IIT Bombay. It was really fantastic. That was the first job I got. So I came, and it was such a, at least the chemical engineering department at that time was such a progressive department. In fact, at one time when I was at IIT Bombay, I possibly had the largest number of PhD students, being the youngest in the department. And the older process or the senior process used to come and support all the time. We used to have a Professor Killer who was the head of the department at my time, and he was really, really, really supportive. Then we had Professors Madhavan, Kakkar, Kannan Moudgalya. So a lot of people who have helped me. So IIT Bombay was a great experience. In a very short 5 years, I had
This is from 90s, and
96 to 2000. So I had already graduated a PhD student. I had several PhD students pursuing their degrees with me. But somehow, I don't know whether I'll make the same decision now if I go back in time. But somehow at that time in 2000, I felt that so the AI in chemical engineering closely tied to what we call as systems engineering in chemical engineering. So in systems engineering, we still do a lot of theoretical computational work in optimization, in modeling, and so on. And somehow I felt that the work that I do will have more impact if I were in the US. And that was one of the main reasons that I...
because India was a very different place at that time.
Yeah, that time. I could have persevered. Things started changing, 7, 8 years later. But, that's a decision I made at the time. So I applied to multiple universities, and Clarkson University in upstate New York called me right as soon as I applied. And then the interview was within 2 weeks of that. And then I went there and I got an offer right away. And I had many considerations at the time. So I had 4 PhD students. And in the US, it's very difficult to get funding. It takes a while to get funding. So I told the university, if you fund all of these 4 students, then I'll come. They said yes to that. And then the students said they won't write GRE. I went to them and said, you should not make them write GRE. They said yes to that. So Clarkson treated me wonderfully. So I went there.
So you were able to move almost with your entire
Entire, which was unheard of in those days. So that gave me a really great start to my research career. So I didn't miss a beat when I moved from IIT Bombay to Clarkson. And at Clarkson, again, I've said this many times, and though I'm an Indian, I've been in 2 Indian universities. If you were to ask me what was the most friendliest department that I worked in, it would be Clarkson.
Okay.
There were 14 faculty, small chemical engineering department. A wonderful bunch of people. So I really enjoyed Clarkson. I would never have left Clarkson if not for the cold, real cold climate.
Oh,
Absolute, right? Yeah, and the temperatures to -20, -30, and so on. So moved to Texas Tech at Lubbock, and I was there for a very short bit though. There I was there 2.5 years, but decided to come back to IIT Madras.
When you came back, was Professor Anand the director?
In fact, that's another interesting story in my life. Once you go settle down somewhere, Clarkson, Texas Tech, then, though I had in the back of my mind I should come back, but it was not prominent. So I would have just moved on. Because sometimes you don't think about these things very deliberately.
Yeah.
Life looks good, children are there, they're going to school, nothing seems wrong. So things move on. But there was a conference in Bombay that I got invited to. So I came and gave a presentation, and incidentally, Professor Anand was also invited to the same conference. So after my talk, he came and asked me, Raghu, when are you coming back? Then I laughed off, and then I said, okay, I'll come back is what I think I told him. I don't exactly remember. Then I went back, and my wife and I, we were walking around a lake that used to be near our house. And then I said, Professor Anand asked me this. Then she said, yes, we should go back. And she was so passionate about that. I said, if you're so passionate about this, why didn't you tell me before? So she told me, look, your career was going really well, and I didn't know whether you wanted to make a change. Then I said, okay, there's a lot of interest from my wife to come back, and I've always been wanting to come back in the back of my mind. So I said, this is the time. We just applied and came back.
Right.
That's how this happened.
Nice. So Professor Anand was like the forcing function.
He was like a catalyst.
Catalyst. Oh, I missed that. Yeah, the catalyst.
You're a mechanical engineer, right?
Yes, yeah. I thought forcing. Professor, just before we move ahead, I want to say that because you made that point, my brother studied in IIT Kharagpur, and my dad also. So, and my mother also. So I think this idea that all the older IITs at least are very similar. And I think many of the faculty here have deep collaborations with other faculty. So I think the point of collaboration and mild competition is noted.
Yeah.
In my family, there's a joke that each of us know which IIT is the best IIT. We just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So, Professor, in your journey, you've written 2 books on process control and data science for engineers. So maybe you can give us a little bit understanding of what data science for engineers is all about.
Yeah, I will. I'll give you some bit about both the books because there is a reason why I wrote both these books.
Okay.
And the first book was on process control. Other than my project work, there are 2 courses that I really loved at IIT Madras. One was on reaction engineering, the other one was process control. Because process control was very mathematical, I was naturally inclined. So I really enjoyed that course. But I still learned that course as pieces of many things. So at some point in my career, I started teaching that course. And then I wanted to see how to simplify it. Then one day, so you can't do this for all courses, I think. But this one particular course, one day I had this thought that it looks like everything is revolving around one concept, right? Which is splitting transfer function, just a little bit technical here, splitting a transfer function with a numerator and denominator into partial fractions. Okay, then I said, okay, how much of this course can I teach with this one principle as the central rallying principle? And I will keep pushing it till it breaks and I need a new concept. Then I realized there is a very nice structure in which you can build this process control, which I used to teach here, and the students used to love it, at least from the teacher evaluation. That's what it seemed like. And they also used to come and tell me they used to love the course and so on. So I thought it's worthwhile to put this in a book. So that's why I wrote the first book. The second book was again from teaching multiple times. So in fact, I think it might be 2016 or even before that, we have a startup called Geeta Private Limited, and before that it was GAN Data. We used to teach these courses for industry folks on data science and AI. So I'm talking about 8, 9, 10 years back. Now there are lots of materials. So those days there was not as much material out there. So again, like control, but little different. What are the key components that we need to teach the folks in industry? Linear algebra, optimization, statistics, and so on are important for data science and AI. So I started teaching for industries, companies, these. But then again, I found if you teach linear algebra, it was very abstract. So how do you connect it to data science? So I spent a lot of time because, if you teach a very abstract 2 hours to an industry person, they're going to be, while they will enjoy the new things they learn, but they'll still say, how is it connected, right? So to make those connections and simplify it so that it is directly a concept to something that is tangible. How do you bring that in when you teach linear algebra? How do you bring that when you teach statistics? Statistics is even harder, even more abstract. So those things I used to make up some simple ways of explaining these things. And again, I felt this might be worthwhile to put in a book. And that's why I wrote this Data Science for Engineers book. So the idea was to be theoretically accurate, but at the same time accessible, which is very hard in general. So that's what I've tried to do. How much I've succeeded is for others to say, but that's the idea of the book.
In both these cases, it was earlier a course which you have been thinking about how to teach the course better. It's moved into a concept that you use in your course and then moved into a book. There's also a lot of rigor involved in writing an engineering book, right? It's not maybe people may not realize how hard it could be and how much time and effort and energy it could take.
Many sleepless nights. This process control book, I over a period of 5 to 6 years, different offerings, I used to write bits of notes, and then finally to combine all of those, and then you have all the material now, but you have to make sure all of that is right because you're putting your reputation behind it. You can't have wrong concepts. Wrong concepts not because but because in the moment you're writing something, you can write things wrong and so on, but you don't want to leave them in the book. So that's a big pressure actually. People might not realize because we don't want to be saying wrong things. In a class, it's okay because in the moment you can say and correct yourself, but in a book, it's there forever.
Yeah.
So this process control book, to finish it, COVID happened.
Okay.
And the last bit of finishing it with one of my co-authors, Neerav Bhatt, he used to come home and we used to sit in the dining table, listen to music and keep checking every bit of the example and so on. So it took a long time to do that.
Yeah.
Other than that.
And the book is also like your peers are going to review it.
Absolutely.
They're going to judge it in any ways.
Yeah. That doesn't come in my head as much as I think self-judgment.
Yes.
I'm going to find something wrong and say, wow, did I write this thing?
Yeah.
So that is a bigger worry for me. And the data science book, again, because I built a lot of material, again, wrote things. But the last bit of 2 weeks of work to correct everything, I couldn't find at all because I was also the dean for global engagement here. So there was a trip that I made to the US. I took a 2-week break, I think, to go and settle down our son in University of Washington, Seattle, where he is pursuing a PhD. So I stayed in a relative's house. So I used to have jet lag. So by 2:30, I used to get up. So usually you try to fight jet lag. So this time, over a period of about 2 weeks, every day I used to get up at 2:30, go down, have a cup of coffee from 3 to 9 when no one will come down. those 6 hours were spent correcting this. If not for that, I would never have finished this book.
Nice. As you are saying this, and you were talking about accuracy in publishing an academic work, I'm reminded of something Professor Anand had told us. I can't remember when the context was, but the line I remember very clearly. He said, he was talking about a chemistry book, high school chemistry book, and he said, all nitrates of silver are soluble except silver bismuth nitrate, I think. And he was saying that, you know, it is a fully accurate sentence, but he was talking about a class 7 book, and he was saying silver bismuth nitrate is very rare, so you could actually write all nitrates are soluble and stop with that. But the writer has to be fully accurate at all times.
So there's another Professor Anand quote which he says it's not his quote, but the story is good anyway.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this. So apparently in one test he had given marks without putting what is the total marks in the sheet. So apparently one student asked, he's got some 40 or something. He said, Professor Anand, I got 40 out of what? Apparently Professor Anand said, pity. I talked to him later about this and he said, no, that's a quote that is someone else's, somehow it's morphed onto him, but this is a really good story.
Nice. I remember also another quote which is attributed to Professor Anand, probably somebody else's. I think the research park was just coming up, and he made this quote saying that every building, I think the day before it's completed, looks like very dirty and it looks like a construction site. But the day it's completed and the painting is done, it looks way open. And I think he was reflecting on how long it takes to build something.
How arduous it is.
How hard it is. Yeah. How arduous it is. Nice. So you mentioned that the second book that you were writing was very difficult because you became the dean for global engagement. And it'll be nice for you to explain to us what is global engagement. Of course, the students here and some of the stakeholders have heard of it. Maybe you can tell us exactly what it does, how it came about.
Yeah, so at IIT Madras, there was a deanship called International and Alumni Relations Dean. So that international is the global engagement part.
INAR, which was
Professor Nag.
Professor Nag, who's also, I think, a Purdue alumnus.
I don't think so. It's both his children are Purdue alums.
Okay.
He is from Yale, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. But so if you want a Purdue connection, the dean after Professor Nag is Mahesh. Mahesh was 2 years junior to me at Purdue.
Nice.
And anyway, I think a year and a half into Mahesh's tenure, there was a collective recognition, I think, that this one deanship for INAR is not tenable anymore, given the wide spectrum of activities that happen. So they split the deanship into two deanships. One was alumni and corporate relations. The other one was global engagement.
Okay.
And Mahesh continued as alumni and corporate relations, and I became the first dean of global engagement. So largely we know global engagement as interacting with the world, but that's all that I started with. But then you kind of think about what that means. So we organized this Office of Global Engagement in multiple verticals so that there is clarity in terms of what we are trying to do. So one vertical was academic programs. Another vertical was academic research. Another article was conferences, and I'll explain what that is. And then, of course, this was not part of the plan when we started it, but the Institute of Eminence projects, in terms of the research projects, also got finally administered through this office. So the fourth vertical is IOE vertical. So this is how we have organized. So the academic programs means exchange students, getting students from abroad here, sending our students abroad, sending our PhD students abroad for part of their curriculum, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. So it's all about mobility of students, you might want to think of, and also the programs that come under the broad umbrella of academic joint programs, joint doctoral programs, joint master's programs.
Sure.
even exchange programs, which are well structured and so on. So all academic programs where we have students go out and students come in is one vertical. Academic research is
So just on the previous part, the Office of Global Engagement is like the sort of the administrative support for all of these programs.
so for students who come from abroad, there are lots of things that you need to do: visa, FRRO, and so on. All of those our office does, and also reaching out to students all over the world, telling them these opportunities exist in IIT Madras is also what.
Okay, so there's an administrative function, there's a publicity kind
publicity, and then there's also an academic function. So because there will be students who will say, I want, what courses can I take? So then our office will interact with departments and then say, this student is coming, he or she is interested in all of these courses. Do you have seats in your course for them to take, and so on. So that bit of academic matchmaking also sometimes it's done.
Fair enough, because these credits have to transfer to their.
Correct. But departments do all academics, but we are a very sliver of an interface which does that matchmaking. So all of those for students who come from.
Is there a strategic element also where you are deciding which universities to work with? How is the demand flow? Or
Yeah, so that has changed tremendously in the last 10 to 15 years, I would say. Initially, when Professor Nag started it, and he's really a pioneer in this. He really thought about a structure for bringing in students, bringing in universities to collaborate with IIT Madras and so on. Those days, we might have been looking for universities to say yes to us, but now there is so much or so many universities which want to work with IIT Madras. It's more a question of seeing what we want to do. Typically, I don't believe fully in ranking and saying, okay, these are top universities, we want to work only with those, because there are top people in all universities. So we want to look at the intent and the strength of the relationship and what we are going to do, not what the rank of the university.
Sure.
Because there could be a pocket of excellence in some university. It is the best. You don't want to just say rank and so.
I think you mentioned this earlier also. Suppose a student's interest area is in a particular, say, AI in chemical engineering, which is what you're talking about. Maybe there's a top university which doesn't have subfield there.
Absolutely. So in our in at least academic thinking, we cannot be regimented with ranks and so on. I think that's because we have the ability to discern and see what is good. So that's how we look at this. So similar thing in academic research, we look at how we can interact with universities from all over the world, and this is becoming more and more important given that strategic areas of interest for India, if we can make these connections. So we build capacity here faster and so on. So universities are becoming very, very important in nation building in that sense. So if there is a new area, we don't have much capacity, then we can make these connections and build capacity here and so on. Semiconductor was one such example.
I think there's a joint program in semiconductor.
Yeah, there is a letter of intent with Purdue University, and there are a lot more.
Purdue is back.
Yeah, then there's a lot more interest that is coming up. So we are looking at it. International conferences is a very important aspect. I think we have run several international conferences inside campus. And the reason why we do this is because we want to give the students an opportunity to listen to the best, network with the best, and so on, right here in the campus. So this is another activity that we do from the Office of Global Engagement. And administering Institute of Eminence schemes, that's something that.
The Institute of Eminence scheme is the Government of India scheme where the government has identified, I think 15, I don't know the exact number.
6 or 7, for whom they've given 1,000 crores.
Okay. So the IIT Madras is, and I know that IIT Bombay is also.
IIT Bombay is, IIT Delhi is.
And then it's up to the institute to decide how to use the grant.
Yes, and at IIT Madras we have used 60 to 70% of the money for research projects. And even that, we didn't come top down and say these are the research areas that we'll work on. Instead, we said bottom up, organically, find what groups can actually do the best work. So through a 2-phase proposal process, we identified groups and funded them. So that's the Institute of Eminence scheme. And so these are all schemes inside here serving the community of IIT Madras. by reaching out to other parts of the world, but the activities are anchored here. But the next generation of ideas are actually to take IIT Madras out. It is to bring the first part was all that I said was to bring the world to IIT Madras in some sense by even sending our students out, bringing students in, sending our faculty out, bringing faculty in, and so on. But whole scale, how do you take IIT Madras outside of India is a next thinking that
Are we approaching the IIT Zanzibar topic?
yeah, we are approaching to IIT Zanzibar as a main topic, and other effort which is more recent. We have started about 6-7 months back. This idea of IITM Global. So these are the two things that we are.
So overall, academic programs, collaboration with universities abroad, research programs, collaboration with university abroad, conferences that can be set up here, international conferences, or maybe does it also like students or faculty from here going to conferences?
That also be fun, but the focus of conference secretariat here is to help run international conferences here.
And then the Institute of Eminence scheme, which is a major grant that's given to IIT, how to administer it within campus. Okay. And lastly, you were talking about taking all these initiatives. How do you scale them up? And so therefore, there's this new thing called IITM Global, which is almost like, is it like setting outposts?
So I'll come to that. So the first thing about going out is what is it that you're going out as, right? So IIT Madras Zanzibar is the first offshore campus of IIT Madras,
Of any IIT.
of any IIT, and IIT Madras. But IIT Delhi has a
Abu Dhabi,
campus in
yeah.
Abu Dhabi, and I assume there will be more IITs that will set up based on the learnings from these two efforts. And there are different ways in which you can set up a broad campus. We have thought about IIT Madras Zanzibar campus as a microcosm of IIT Madras campus. In other words, if you think of Indian university setting up a campus in a foreign country, it can be purely for degree programs. So it becomes a degree granting college or a university. At IIT Madras Zanzibar, right from the beginning, our vision has been that initially it will be a smaller version of IIT Madras, but it will do everything that IIT Madras does.
Okay.
So what that means is that IIT Madras Zanzibar campus will have degree programs. IIT Madras Zanzibar will have research.
Okay.
IIT Madras Zanzibar will have outreach to companies and industries for skilling programs. IIT Madras Zanzibar will do consultancy for companies in the region, and innovation and incubation will also become a part of IIT Madras Zanzibar.
Sure. So we are talking about teaching, placements, industrial consultancy, research, granting PhDs,
Innovation,
the innovation stack. Yeah, all of
skilling.
these.
All the things that we do at IIT Madras, we want to see them in IIT Madras Zanzibar campus, clearly at a smaller scale to start with. But the DNA should be such that it is not viewed as a degree granting campus. It is viewed as a full-fledged campus, which in fullness of time will scale to be one of the best in East Africa. So that is the vision with which we have started IIT Madras Zanzibar campus. And currently there are 3 programs in IIT Madras Zanzibar. There is a Bachelor of Science in Data Science and AI, a Master of Technology in Data Science and AI, and a Master of Technology in Ocean Structures.
Okay.
And in the second year of operation, the campus has around, I think, 106 students. We have hired 5 permanent faculty.
I have this question. Yeah. Do they have admissions via JE?
They don't have admissions here.
So how is the admissions like?
So there is a separate testing committee that is set up at IIT Madras, which comes up with a test, and that test is administered all over the world, including India.
Okay.
And students pass the test. Then there is an interview. that is conducted, and then there is a selection there.
Okay, so it's admitting students into these 3 courses from Zanzibar, but also
No, from all over the world.
okay, from all over.
So, and including India. So, currently we have out of the 106 students, I would say about 45 to 50% Indian students actually, about maybe 30% students from Zanzibar, and the remaining from other parts of the world, Zambia, Kenya.
These are other East African countries.
It's open to every country, but right now we have started getting students from East Africa, and I think over time we will get students from all over Africa, and ultimately maybe from other parts of the world, Middle East, South America, and so on. So we'll have to see how that goes. So it's a truly international campus. We want
From day one, it's an
international campus. From day one, it's an international campus. And the government of Zanzibar is fully aligned with this view. So, in fact, when we talked to them first and then said, how do you view this? Do you view this as for Zanzibar students? They said, we want this to be a truly international campus. We want this campus to show that we can get the best of education in Zanzibar to the whole world. That's the way they think about it.
Yes. So students who join the courses, so you were saying that there are 3 courses and it's expanding.
It's expanding, and we will do a very rational expansion in terms of what are the needs for Africa. So initially we went with these courses in data science and AI because they are very current, they are relevant, and so on. But the other courses now we'll have to look at what are the needs for the immediate region and so on, and then decide what we will do in terms of introducing new courses. But I was saying, in terms of the faculty who teach, I think the students in IIT Madras Zanzibar have a very unique advantage in the sense that we are also bringing faculty from everywhere to come and teach. And again, in the next few years, you'll have faculty from all parts of the world who will come and teach there. So we have 5 permanent faculty in the campus. 4 are of Indian origin and 1 is of Kenyan origin. And we get faculty from the main campus to go and teach. We are going to get faculty from other IITs to go and teach a course at a time and come. And then we'll get faculty from other universities across the world to come and teach. So in that sense, the students of Zanzibar are going to really get an eclectic mix of really good faculty who come and teach that. We think that will really broaden their understanding of not only the subject, but a broader understanding of the world that we operate in.
So one of the big draws of joining a campus like that is that there's a mix of students and a mix of faculty. I would think, I mean, of course, it depends on the student, but some students would simply be attracted by the idea that it's a new thing. And if I'm part of this new thing, then, I'll grow with it and I'll get more opportunities. And anyway, because it's an IIT Madras brand, the risk is much less.
Yeah. And I think, it's an IIT Madras brand first, so you get an IIT Madras degree, which is one of the most important things. Of course, the second thing is you get a wider perspective when you sit with students with very different nationalities. And again, as you said, when you get taught by faculty from different universities and so on. So I think holistically, it will be a great experience because, the college is not about just getting a degree, right? All of us know, right? And the skills that you need to develop other than your technical skills.
Yeah.
And that is even more important in this age. And I say this, if you were a chemical engineer graduating from a college about 40 years back, you can pretty much imagine yourself retiring as a chemical engineer, right? But if you are a chemical or an electrical or a mechanical engineer graduating out of class right today, I think it will be foolish to actually think that you'll retire as a mechanical or electrical or chemical. So the idea of the interdisciplinary skills technically and the ability to work with people globally right? And the ability to adapt and think of yourself as someone who's going to add value based on what you can do, not based on just your degree.
Yeah.
I think these are all very important aspects that students need to understand. And what better place to understand this than a completely international setting?
Yeah.
Is the way I would think of it.
Fair enough. The engineering today, or the silos of engineering that we have set up, are like 200 years old, and they're sort of broken, completely. Can we spend 1 minute talking about the director of IIT Madras Zanzibar, because she's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Professor Preeti was a professor here, and now she's fully based in Zanzibar.
Yeah, she is fully based in Zanzibar. And in fact, there is an interesting parallel. She also started at IIT Bombay.
Yeah.
Though we didn't overlap. I was there when she was interviewed, but by the time she joined, I had left. She's doing a really amazing job. It's a very hard job. Setting up a university is a hard job. Setting up a university with an Indian character abroad
Yeah.
is harder. And the way the setup is in terms of where the money comes from and so on is quite complicated. So you have to navigate all of those. And clearly, though I have been outside in the US for several years, and Preeti has done her graduate studies in the US and so on. Though we can claim to have some international exposure, but the kind of international exposure that is required for something like a Zanzibar is totally different, right? Because
But also in US, and you mentioned it, like you have a lot of Indians already there, and you've been supported.
here also, I think there are Indians still there, but still we are getting students from various parts of Africa. We have to learn the culture, we have to understand the culture. So those are things that we have not done before.
Fair.
So you start with everything from setting up infrastructure to academic programs to administratively figuring out finances, approvals, all of those, and on top of it, learning the culture so that you don't have many missteps. Right, so this is not an easy job. So this is
You have to be an administrative head, you have to be the publicity head, you have to be the academic head,
you have to be everything.
and you have to be a friend to the students because they're new and they're from all over the world.
But I think the initial days have been very, very good. And I have to say that the intent with which the people in Zanzibar are coming to this is really fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so there might be things that we have to discuss and identify, figure out. But the intention has always been fantastic. They're very clear that this is an institute that has to be the best. How we get there, we have to discuss. There are multiple ways to get there, we will discuss. But the intent and support has been fantastic. That I have to say.
I want to draw a parallel here and note some very significant differences. When India became independent in 47, and that time there was a Sarkar committee which recommended IITs be set up, and then IIT Kharagpur got set up, and IIT Madras and Bombay all got set up, and IIT Madras got a lot of help from Germany. I think state-sponsored help, like the government of West Germany helped us. There were faculty here. I don't know whether there was funding from them, but definitely I've heard seniors talk about German professors being here, and we maybe inherited a little bit of their culture in terms of the academic engineering rigor, because they are an engineering nation. And now we are helping another country set up a higher education institute. But the times have totally changed, right? We were a post-colonial country. Germany was a colonist. Not a colonist in the sense that they colonized us, but in general. It's totally different here. We can't have that kind of, we have to have a very friendly kind of relationship, right?
So I would say German professors would have also been very friendly, right? So I don't think there is any difference there because, after being in Zanzibar, I'm going next week again to kind of go there and be there, be away from home and do work there. I can imagine how difficult it would have been for German professors to do that. Now that in hindsight, when I see my own experience. right? There is a passion to make a change. And I cannot imagine there would have been anything else that would have allowed these professors to come. It's not that the government would have said, if you don't go, this will happen, right? People volunteered to come. And I think that is the spirit of academics, that the idea that I want to develop a region educationally is one of the most important tenets of academics, or it should be. So in that sense, I think there won't have been the colonial connotation wouldn't have been there. But I can tell you slightly in this topic, when we go to Zanzibar, we have not gone, or we should not go with the idea that I'm coming to uplift people. It is just that we are learning from each other and we are trying to do the best we can. It's as simple as that. And if we really do well, and if it becomes a beacon of excellence, I think that's the most wonderful thing that IIT Madras would have done.
Yeah.
Because it's a very unique opportunity. You can say countries have influence on countries and so on, but Zanzibar is a very small country, so to speak, right? It's about 2 million people. And if IIT Madras has a technological effect on every aspect of this country, then you can say there's an institute that has made a difference to a country, which is something which is very unique, which is not easy to get. And this is not because it's just IIT Madras, it's also because of the smallness in terms of the population of the country, where you could make a difference like this. So you can think of this in multiple ways, but fundamentally you go with the intention of doing good.
Yeah.
And in this case, IIT Madras is not benefiting financially at all.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we are truly going there to.
You're saying that the reason we are doing it is more from an academic exploration,
Absolutely.
cultural exchange kind of point of view.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Maybe I should just also, on behalf of everybody watching and all the stakeholders, also congratulate you and the department for being able to pull it off. 1 year is over, right? So the first batch which joined will be giving their final exams.
No. The second batch is already in.
Okay.
So 2 batches are on, and the first batch of master students will graduate in another 4 months. So we'll have the first batch of alumni coming out in 4 months out of IIT Madras Science.
Nice. Congrats.
So the second effort that I mentioned was IITM Global.
Yeah.
So IIT Madras Zanzibar is a campus, which was set up through a tripartite agreement between the Government of India, Government of Zanzibar, and IIT Madras. It's a very complicated process, a very heavy process, and so on. So we also think that there are things in IIT Madras that we can take global, but not as a campus, but as something simpler. So what we are looking at, or we have already set up something called IITM Global, which will basically take our research that is being done at IIT Madras, the patents that are being generated at IIT Madras, and the startups that are coming into the IIT Madras ecosystem, and take them collectively together through a platform to multiple countries. And that vehicle or the platform is what we are calling as IITM Global.
Okay.
So there will be a physical presence of IITM Global in a few countries, where we will facilitate research contracts through this entity for IIT Madras faculty, which are of relevance to the local region. We will
a physical outpost.
Yeah.
Like a trading post, you could say. No, I mean, it's not a trading post, I know.
Yeah, it's an academic post still, but focused on research, innovation, and IP.
Sure.
Because almost all academic institutions have to think about innovation, have to think about intellectual property, and so on. So these aspects which we have done well, we want to take it to other countries as IITM Global. So that thought also comes a little bit from IIT Madras Zanzibar. It's not a campus, but it is a physical presence of IIT Madras where we take, as I said before, the research, the IP, the innovation, the
I
startup.
want to ask you: have other IITs done this? Have other universities done this? Is this a common model?
I won't call it a common model. Many universities, when they come to other countries, it is more for giving out their degrees. And if I may say, it is a little more commercial in that sense.
Sure.
But to take a research innovation incubation ecosystem of your university outside, there might be a few, but not common.
Okay, understood. Wow, we covered so much. I want to note here that when you were talking of Professor Preeti and you were talking about how she wears multiple hats, that's something that you've also done here quite often. We started by talking about your own research area, the courses you teach, and then we spoke about the books you wrote, and then we moved on to the IITM Global. But in the middle, you were also part of the Center for the Robert Bosch Center, and now you're part of the Walmart Center for Tech Excellence. So, um, and there are 3 startups that you are part of. So, I think maybe we can talk about the startups a little bit, and then my bigger question is, how does an academic like yourself manage all these things, and what are the challenges involved? Should we start with the startups first?
Yeah, sure. So very quickly, I've been involved with 3 startups. We started GAN Data Private Limited more than a decade ago, with the idea that some of the work that we had done in data science, targeting as manufacturing process industries, could be made into products. That's how we started GAN Data. But over the years, GAN Data has been doing several projects on data science and AI services in the manufacturing industry. So that is GAN Data.
2011 means it would have been one early incubator, one of the
One of the very few first ones from IIT Madras. In fact, I came in 2011 May to IIT Madras. I think we incubated this, if I'm not mistaken, July of 2011 with Professor Shankar Narasimhan, who is my co-founder and who's been at IIT Madras longer than I have been and works in the same or similar areas to mine. While at GAN Data, there was a lot of interest from companies in terms of learning about this data science and AI. So we spun off a company called Geeta Private Limited, which was focused on education. But Geeta has grown into an education company, and we are also building a product called InstaQP, which is a product which will help with assessments and question papers and so on. And while I have worked quite a bit on data science and AI, my chemical engineering track always runs. And I used to work on identifying failures in fuel cell system because my original research area was fault detection and diagnosis, and applying that to fuel cells because of connect that came when I was a faculty in IIT Bombay. So there is this lab called NMRL in Ambernath, and there was somebody who was building fuel cell systems. And then because I worked in fault detection diagnosis, we started thinking about how to apply some of these techniques for fuel cell systems. So I learned fuel cells from that time, and we have a company called Elysius, which is looking at building a newer architecture for FEM fuel cells.
Okay.
So those are the 3 startups. Now, your other question, I think a lot of people misunderstand what a faculty does. So even my dad, he used to think a faculty goes, teaches a certain number of hours, and then everything else is free. So whenever I used to tell him that I have no class but I have work, he will ask me what work, because I've taught my class. But I think even those days it was wrong notion. But those days I think a faculty's life was largely restricted to classroom teaching and research. But now most successful faculty have to wear multiple hats. It's not just a few. Almost everyone who is successful has to wear multiple hats. You have to be a good teacher. You have to be a good researcher. You have to be a good manager. And the reason why you have to be a good manager is if you're a good researcher, you're successful, you're pulling in grants, your research group is large. And whether it's a company group, research group, whatever it is, humans are humans. So you have to handle all kinds of emotions. So you have to be a good manager. You have to be a good administrator. And if you're also interested in innovation, startups and so on, then you have to learn this also, how to raise money, how to deliver products and so on. These are all things that are not at all there in an academic lexicon, right? You don't talk about delivering products. You talk about trying to do research, work on whatever I like, so on. So that part has changed considerably. So really successful academics have to do many things and do many things well. So it is a challenge. It is a challenge. You have to have really good time management skills, number one. You have to be able to take success and failure with equanimity. Uh, don't get overjoyed with success or too depressed with failures. And in general, the philosophy I have in my life is you sort of enjoy every experience. You go with the flow. Don't think that you're doing great stuff, too many things. I am doing this and that. You just say these are all opportunities which I wanted to have, which I have. So just do the best you can. And some of them will succeed, some of them will fail. But if you don't take too much pride in the success or to lose too much heart in the failure, you will be all right, because ultimately you know that you're making a difference on that. So that's how I think about it. And the younger faculty are starting on this much before people like me in terms of age, right? So if I look at the young faculty now and the number of things that they're doing to my time, now it's a lot more. And they have to keep this up for all their academic career. So it's important to pace yourself, think about what is important.
It's beautiful the way you said it. One is that I know we spoke about faculty life, but what you said is true of any person. If you're doing well, your existing opportunities will grow. You'll get new opportunities and you'll take them on. And you have to be able to handle all of that. But the other thing that also sort of you implied is that I know the hats, they keep adding up. It's not like you're removing one hat and adding one. It's not like you stop being a researcher and now you're an administrator. You're first a teacher, then a teacher plus a researcher, then a teacher plus a researcher plus a administrator. Now, yeah, you take care of the breadth and the depth at the same time.
That's right. I mean, that's not easy. So you have to expect that some of the things won't go right, some will go right, and so on.
Professor, in that context, how do you relax?
Or right now, whatever time I get, I do watch TV with my wife quite a bit.
Okay.
So OTT is
What are your favorite shows?
many. We are very eclectic in our choice, shall I say.
Okay.
We have seen OTT Tamil shows, English, Hindi, and the most amazing thing is the quality of some of these in any language is just amazing. So I can tell you really fantastic Hindi shows that we have seen, English, Tamil, and so on. So that is one large bit of.
Can I also mention that you mentioned you're watching TV with your wife? Also because, there's this commentary going online about just working a lot and the spouse sometimes.
I like looking at my spouse.
Yeah.
Right?
I didn't say it.
We enjoy very similar shows, so I think it's very nice that.
Yeah.
I used to play tennis, which has stopped. After coming back to India, I started learning Carnatic flute.
Okay.
I learned for 6 years very diligently. I used to practice an hour and a half every day, 2 hours, even with all the other things. But that I've not been able to do at all 2 years. I hope to pick that back up once my deanship gets over. And I enjoy writing. So I want to write on other things, not purely technical, but still with data and analysis in other fields. So that I think actually I would put it under relaxation. It's not immediate your technical field. So
Nice, Professor. That was amazing. I think I've covered most of what we want to talk about. We missed talking a little bit about the Walmart Center for Tech Excellence. I think it's newish.
yeah,
Maybe in the last 1 year.
the last 1 year. So Walmart gave us a nice CSR grant for looking at how you bring AI, ML, IoT, and so on to MSMEs.
Okay.
So the idea is that it's very difficult to hire really good AI, ML scientists in a company that is, somewhere in the 50 crore revenue, because the salaries of these people, shuttles, are so high and the profit margins are very tight. And even if you hire someone who will implement things, after a while they're going to be grabbed by one of these big companies. So while there's a lot of democratization of these technologies, things are put into libraries that are easy to use. You don't have to do much coding, things like that. But there is still a lot of things that you need to understand to be able to implement, see the results of your implementation and so on.
Sure. You're talking about, say, a 50 crore, 100 crore revenue company, which is operating at a good margin. They're in a good place. They could invest in ML, but it's really hard because even though the algorithms and the libraries and everything are available, the people who could help them implement them
Are very expensive and they won't stay for long. And then it's not as if you implement a solution and it stays there. Much
to
like
keep
anything,
working.
keep working on it and so on. So the idea is, how do you help these MSMEs? Broadly, that is what the problem that we are trying to solve through the CSR grant and Walmart Center for Tech Excellence. So early days,
It's very interesting because this is also like sort of building up on the earlier you were talking about educating more people in AI and ML techniques, and you were also talking about making it easier for people to pick up.
absolutely. So, and we have had some very interesting learnings in the last 1 year. Much like everything else, you start with the core of an idea. And then the first year is really, everything is like a startup at some level, right?
Yeah.
You have a core of an idea and then you try various facets of that idea. Some work, some don't work. But it's taken us a year now. But I think we now have a very, very clear roadmap for the next 4 years. So that is something that, again, I'll pursue more vigorously once my internship is done.
Professor, thank you so much. Any parting words before we leave?
I had a lot of fun, Amrut, and if I want to say, I was very happy to see the interviewer being more nervous than the interviewer at the beginning. I don't know whether you're going to edit this out. But it was a real pleasure to talk to you and you so much. And even before this interview, good chat we had. And I think it's a great thing that you're trying to do for IIT Madras.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for watching. That was the best place to build podcast with Professor Raghu. Please like, share, and subscribe. I say it every time, but very few people do it. So please do it. Thank you.